It's August 26, 2024, and I'm with Mr. John J. Jeckovich. We're reading his book, Their Mother's Sons, and we're just starting chapter 16. And this is when Mr. Jeckovich is winding down at the Battle of Bulge. He's still there, but he's getting ready to transfer back to civilian life in Niagara Falls. And so we'll read a little bit and then we'll let Mr. Jeckovich tell the story. Before I start, what's your dog tag number?
42965.
I see. Did you want to read your book today or do you want me to?
You.
Okay. We're starting chapter 16, which is on page 455, and there's about 900 pages to this book. It's a well-written book. He dedicated this book to his wife, Delphine Jeckovich, who passed away on the year 2020 of August 14th. They were married 69 years. She was a fine lady. What do you have to say about your wife before I start?
About Delphine?
Yes, what's your comments?
She's a sweetheart. She's the best. She's the best.
The best of the best. The best of the best. Yeah, that is absolutely wonderful. So, Mr. Jeckovich is still at the Battle of Bulge, and they're getting ready to wind it down to get to a situation where they could get back home. But it's not that easy. You just don't get back home. You go to these little camps, and each camp is named after a cigarette, like Lucky Strike, Pall Mall, Chesterfield.
You go back home on points.
What was the name of the camp that you're in?
Pall Mall.
Pall Mall. And who passed out all the cigarettes to the young soldiers?
Red Cross.
Red Cross. And they're all short, non-filtered cigarettes. And did you take up smoking when you were in the service?
No, did I?
Yeah.
No.
Did many young men take up smoking when they're in the service?
Oh, yeah.
So here I go, chapter 16. We're not getting sent back to the falls yet, so we still have a lot of combat work to do. The war is not officially over, and there's still death at the winding down the Battle of Bulge at every corner. Still death at every corner. Keep in mind there was 16,400,000 young men and women who participated in World War II. In 2024, there's less than 100,000 left. But the interesting point, there's only about 7,000 or 8,000 true combat soldiers left. Mr. Jeckovich was frontline combat soldier. He wasn't in the rear echelon. Mr. Jeckovich was wounded by a sniper in his shoulder and shrapnel in his leg, which still has pieces of shrapnel in his leg. And the interesting part was that Mr. Jeckovich went to the hospital for approximately 3 months in Paris, and he met a beautiful girl named Renee. Renee was a very nice girl. She was a former nun. Her mother and father were killed by the Germans in Paris when they occupied Paris. And then also her 2 brothers were killed in Paris. So she kind of switched careers, and she became instrumental in the French resistance. And then the Nazis found out that she was in the French resistance, and they killed her also.
Well, she's the artist too.
Oh yeah, let's not forget that. Renee, her name was, she was
facial artist.
Yeah, she was a portrait artist, highly talented. And when Mr. Jeckovich went the first time into her studio/apartment, all of the walls were portraits of German SS and German tanks, all in the walls of her studio. And why do you think she was painting the SS?
Why?
Yeah, why was Renee painting the SS?
Because she was getting information from them.
She was gathering information. And why do you think many of those portraits weren't picked up by the SS?
Weren't.
Weren't.
Oh, the SS would take them home. They were Eagle. They were the Eagle maniacs.
The
Yeah.
SS have a great big.
And they got a picture, a physical portrait, not a picture, a physical portrait.
She took a lot.
She painted it. Yeah.
She took a lot of time to paint. You're right. The SS had great egos until the war was over. Then they became like timid sheep. And so, but a lot of them didn't come back for their portraits because they were probably dead.
Yeah.
And then the SS found Renee was basically getting information from them. They killed her.
Yeah.
And did Renee ever take you to the headquarters of the French resistance?
Yeah, it's taking hold down in the gutter.
Describe it to us a little bit better.
Well, that's where they had their communication center.
And why do you say a stinking hole? What does that mean?
There was no ventilation down there.
And what kind of offices?
Office? Well, she had a table and a small. If you know the name of the desk, it was two 2x4s with blank on top.
And that was it?
Yeah.
And did you say from Renee's apartment that she could go through underground and get to that office through her back door of the apartment? It connected somehow to the basement of the French resistance?
You mean
from Renee's apartment, was it an easy access to where the French resistance headquarters
no, her apartment?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so, no.
Okay. And what type of people did Renee primarily save?
What she saved?
What type of people did Renee's French resistance save?
Well, they were staunch countrymen. They loved their country.
I see. Well, any text messages you have for Mr. John J. Jeckovich, World War II combat veteran, Purple Heart, 2 Bronze Stars, text them at area code 407-366-0000, 407-366-0000, and as we say in the great state of California and South Carolina and North Carolina, 407-366-double-ought, 407-366-double-ought. So I'll start reading, and for those who don't know, Mr. Jeckovich was in Company H, the 2nd Battalion, 291st Regiment of the 75th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army during World War II. And his division was affectionately referred to as the Diaper Division. Why do they refer to the Diaper Division?
They got everybody from the ASTP and Air Force and all that nonsense.
So young.
Oh, they're all 19. Well, that's what they wanted. They wanted 33s.
Yeah.
They wanted combat.
33's
combat age.
33 is a code for 19, right?
Yeah.
Also another part of the Diaper Division was the 101st. What happened to the 101st?
Well, first,
Yeah.
they got poor leadership, lousy communication, and they got slaughtered.
Not one survived?
No, well, they survived, but I mean, they went down in misery.
Yeah, they went down in misery, is right. And that was basically based on poor leadership.
Yeah.
Was there a leadership problem during the Battle of the Bulge?
Well, yeah, because they were getting leaders, second lieutenants coming out of college, and they didn't know the Aspen holding ground. They didn't know nothing about combat or nothing. They were there because they thought they were so smart. It wasn't. You didn't have to be smart. You had to have street smarts to be there.
And that's what they lacked, was street smarts.
Yeah.
And that's why many of the people with you, including Lape, didn't have street smarts, and he got his head blown off.
Yeah. Well, Lake didn't have street smarts.
He didn't have no street smarts.
No, I tried to take care of him, but I lost them.
He only had book smarts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, both parents were lawyers. He's going to law school.
Yeah. That's quite interesting. So you needed street smarts to survive.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, which isn't saying much.
It is saying a lot, as far as I know. You survived. Two forms of combat you survived. Just saying a hell of a lot as far as I'm concerned. Okay, chapter 16, I think it's a little premature about saying you're going back to civilian life, but it's titled as Civilian Life Once Again. We watched the advancing riflemen as they came within our effective range of fire, and then we lifted our firing when they came to that line. As they entered the town, we picked a suitable spot for the gun. Small arms firing coming from the 9 main factory and knocked out by the airstrike. Other strong points in the town were reduced by the direct fire from tank destroyers. Patrols dispatched down the road failed to find the enemy. So you had patrols going down the road, but you couldn't find the enemy.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the enemy, elusive enemy. We found a warm farmhouse, settled down for the night. I set up the proverbial guard roster with 2 men and a gun in a bunker near the house. The rest of the squad were inside a warm house, resting, shaving, and eating K-rations they had left. Were the infantrymen equipped with shaving cream and shavers?
Shaving cream?
Was the infantrymen on the front line equipped with razors and shaving cream?
No, you improvise.
Okay, you improvised. I did not expect the kitchen to come up, nor did I expect to see Post. What was Post's first name?
Who?
What was Post's first name?
Think?
The man that brought you all the supplies, his last name was Post. What was his first name?
Donald.
What's that?
Donald Post.
Donald Post. He seemed like he was a pretty good guy.
Yeah, well,
Post was a pretty good guy, right?
he was a smart kid, but in the wrong place.
None of us had blankets or shelter halves, and we used what we could find in the house. What city was Donald Post from?
New York. No, Watervliet, New York.
What's that?
Watervliet.
Okay, New York.
Outside of New York.
The next morning at 700 hours, we continued the attack, making slow advances to the southwest against stubborn resistance over the difficult, hilly terrain. On the right, 289th Infantry cleared several towns and villages. The new replacements were doing an admirable job, considering the short time they were in combat. So the new guys you had were doing a pretty damn good job, considering they're completely green. They're completely green.
No, well, they were lucky. Yeah, they were lucky.
Mollenhauer was learning fast and was dependable, cool under strife. I kept a close watch on him. I did not want anything to happen to him. The 291st Infantry advanced slowly against stubborn resistance, taking Perserback and Melgenhauser. After clearing Melgenhauser, we stayed in a solid brick house, a doctor's house, and there was a small operating room and dispensary located in the rear of the house. It was here that we heard of the death of President Roosevelt. So it's right when you're in that doctor's house, you heard of the death of President Roosevelt. So that's how you remember President Roosevelt. Another remarkable factor in your life, you're still a teenage boy, not a draft age yet. Where were you when we entered World War II, the Pearl Harbor invasion?
Sunday afternoon. Japanese invade Pearl Harbor. Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock, I was skating down the creek.
I'll be damned. And to that USS Arizona in Pearl Harbor, still many sailors to this date are being buried in it.
Yeah.
Still buried in it.
That's a shrine now.
Yeah, it's a shrine, exactly. And rightfully so, rightfully so. Let's see where the hell I left off. We all knew that the war in Europe was finally winding down, and none of us wanted to do anything foolish or be exposed to something outlandish danger at this point. So you knew at this stage of the game the war was winding down, but you're still in great risk. If you did something foolish, you'd be blown up by a mine. There's still snipers out there. It's still very dangerous. Still very dangerous. We were ordered to clear the town of Westenfall and then west of Maglehausen. We attached to G Company, and I told the squad to take it easy and not to rush into anything without first reconnecting the area. Minutes? No town at this point
14.
No town at this point was worth your life or the life of your buddy. So you're taking over towns, which seem to be pretty easy, but there could be many snipers still in those houses.
Yeah.
And a lot of the
booby traps.
What's that?
Booby traps, yeah.
And a lot of diehard SS would
Yeah.
still love to take a shot at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all wanted to get home safely and in one piece. It was too late to be thinking about something heroic and dauntless. G Company ran into some snipers, there you go, snipers, on the outskirts of town, but they too were playing it safe. They waited for a couple Shermans to clean out the snipers, and they would move in behind them. How would the Shermans clear out the snipers?
How?
How would the Sherman tanks clear out the snipers?
Service tanks?
How would the Sherman tanks clear out the snipers?
Well, they got their flamethrower, they throw that flamethrower around.
And that did the job. They also find some mines in the vicinity as they suffered several casualties before the engineers cleared them. So there's still a lot of mines out there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And you don't know they're there.
And it's interesting, in England, in some remote parts of England, people are still getting blown up from mines.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe after 80 years that those mines are still active.
Yeah.
You would think they'd be duds by now, right?
Brought it out.
A lot of people lost their legs in mines in Europe in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and still today. We lay back and did not even fire our crew weapon.
Just normal, no?
Text me a picture, I can show them.
Okay.
For our intents and purposes, the war in Europe was over. And we all felt a great sense of relief. Thankful we had come through one of the greatest ordeals of our young lives. Mulhauer was overcome by joy and relief, knowing that he would be going home shortly and would see his family once again. Pastor was already making his wedding plans, and he had invitations, and we had all the invitations to the wedding. Did you ever go to Pastor wedding?
Oh, yeah.
Where was that at?
In Utica, New York.
That must have been a great wedding.
Oh, yeah, Passatory, yeah.
Maxie and Brown were not saying much, and I believe they're rather disappointed that it all ended so soon. They were all looking for great adventure and romantic appeal that they imaged was ahead of them. Maxie, I believe, felt a little bit as I did, and he did not have much to go home to, and he would prefer to let some higher being guide his destiny. On the other hand, General George S. Patton, he didn't want to go home. George S. Patton, he relishes war. He finds it glorious and thinks there is no finer test of a man's courage. He accepts the fact that horrible death can happen to any man at any time. Well, horrible death happened to him, but it wasn't in the war. It wasn't in the war.
He went through it, too.
Yeah, he went through World War I and II, and even though he was in his late 50s and looked like 40 years old or 40 years old, Patton didn't want to go home. He said on his birthday last year, which was Christmas, December 25th.
They were looking for a crossing, and that one guy, one major said, "What's that son of a bitch across the river? How did he find that spot?" He was on there. He said, "Get over here, get over here."
Yeah, well, the year before it was winding down. A lot of the generals thought it was winding down, and these generals were having customized pistols and skeet shotguns made at these gunsmith, and other generals were going to weddings, and other generals were going to the country club, because in December 1944, these generals all thought it was winding down, but they were wrong, because right coming after that was a huge battle, the Battle of the Bulge. Patton, he didn't think like these other generals. He said, it's not winding down, and the best thing that can happen to me on my birthday, which is December 25th, 1944, if I'm killing some Germans, and that would be his best birthday.
On his birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Patton.
Yet he is not immune to human suffering. And the Battle of Bulge is taking a hard toll on him. Just what I said. The Battle of Bulge took a hard toll on Patton. Tell us your experience when you ran into Patton.
What?
When you had experience when you bumped into Patton, how'd that go?
With Patton?
You said you ran into Patton, you were in a barn. You didn't have your Jeep in enough. You said you seen Patton while you guys were trying to get warm in a barn.
Yeah, well, he spotted our Jeep, posted hiding.
What happened?
Well, he said, what are you guys sleeping here? You need to get back to the next checkpoint.
And what was the weather like then?
It's raining out. Raining.
And what time in the morning was it?
3 o'clock.
Wow. Patton finds war glorious, yet he is not immune to human suffering, and the Battle of Bulge is taking a hard toll on him. It is within his power to ease the pain and hardships of those embattled men of the 101st Airborne. His failure to do so haunts him. So the 101st, they got slaughtered, these young guys got slaughtered. It basically haunted Patton to his death.
Yeah.
It haunted Patton. All those young men got slaughtered under Patton's direction. It has been a week since the meeting with Eisenhower and Verdun. Patton is too keyed up to sleep any more than a few hours a night. So Patton can't even sleep. He's just so keyed up. He wants to make progress in this Battle of Bulge. He doesn't want to stop. He wants to keep going. He is so keyed up. He can't even sleep a few hours a night. He is so drained and dog-tired. His face is burned bright red from the wind blast of too many hours in the open-air Jeep. So he'd always be in that open-air Jeep.
Yeah.
When you seen him, he was in that open-air Jeep, right?
Yeah.
Face bright red, wind burned.
Yeah, took a toll on him.
The lines around his blue eyes have become deep visions. I saw a tired, aged man, notes a Red Cross volunteer, who caught a glance of Patton at Christmas Eve church service. A sorrowful, solitary man, a lonely man, with veiled eyes behind, which was going on a torment of brooding and depression. So Patton had his own personal problems. He was going through depression. He was tormented with sadness. He had everything that you wouldn't want in your life.
Yeah.
He had a lot of demons he was fighting. And he looks so old. He looks so old. Patton cannot rest. Patton cannot rest. He's got to keep going. He is failing, so he can't rest. A clear, cold Christmas, he wrote in his journal. Lovely weather for killing Germans. He loves that. Lovely weather for killing Germans, which seems a bit queer, seeing his birthday is on Christmas Day. I left early this morning to try to visit all the divisions in contact with the enemy. All were cheerful. I am not, because we are not going fast enough. So Patton didn't think the infantry was moving fast enough for him. He wanted to move faster. That's why he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. He was keyed up. There was no Christmas truce, and sometimes occurred during the First World War. So after arranging for every man in his army to have a turkey dinner, which is cool, he arranged every man in his division to have a turkey dinner for Christmas, cold sandwiches for the soldiers at the front, a hot meal for those behind the lines. So it's interesting that the front line got a cold sandwich and the rear echelon got hot turkey dinners. Yeah, but he left early in that morning to visit every one of his combat divisions. So he was hands-on.
Yeah.
That's how come you bumped into him.
Yeah.
It was a long day, and Patton was not uplifted by what he saw. The only good news came the next morning when he reports that a new sort of artillery fuse was being used effectively against the Germans' strong point in the town of Antrimach. We actually killed 700 of them, he wrote offhandedly in his journal. Now he spends the 26th, Boxing Day, having heard that some of his tanks are within a half dozen miles of Bastogne. But today, as with yesterday, the day before victory, hardly seems likely. Reports, fighting back to his headquarters, state that his tank divisions continue to take heavy casualties. So even now, his tank divisions are getting hit hard. Lots of casualties. Making matters worse, far worse, is rather than helping Patton by pushing his own army south towards Bastogne, British Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery refuses to attack. Did you ever meet Montgomery?
Yeah, but I never talked about. I've seen him.
Him
Yeah.
and Patton were always fighting, right?
Yeah.
He says his army is not ready. Montgomery says his army is not ready to attack, and Patton says, get your army out there. I want you to start attacking. Patton says, get out there. Montgomery says his army is not ready to attack, and insists of encouraging Patton's plan to relieve the 101st. Montgomery is deepening their professional rivalry by predicting that Patton and the Third Army will fail. So Montgomery's predicting that Patton will fail. When Montgomery goes so far as to insist Eisenhower that Patton return to the Metz, claiming that Patton's army is too small to take Bastogne. Patton severs all pretense of friendship with his British counterpart. He calls the idea of retreat to Metz disgusting. He says he won't retreat under no circumstance. He says it's disgusting. Short of men or not, we're going. But Montgomery's behavior only adds to the pressure on Patton. Because of the simple look at the current battlefield situation, maps show one thing is becoming even clearer. No one can save the battered bastards of Bastogne except for Patton and his Third Army. In fact, no one else is even making the effort. No one. So the only one's making the effort is Patton. Right?
Yeah. Patton.
Push. The same day the phone at Patton's headquarters rings. It's Major Hugh Gaffey, commanding the 4th Armored, is on the other end requesting permission to launch a high-risk attack into Bastogne immediately. Patton does not hesitate. I told him to try it. He will write it in his journal tonight. With that order, the 4th Armored Division begins fighting their way towards Tony McAfee's and the trapped men of his 101st Airborne. So all the 101st are trapped. They can't move, right?
Yeah.
They can't move. Minutes?
One.
Lieutenant Colonel Ames commanded the Spearhead 30-something tank battalion. He chews on the long unit of a cigar and enormous men compared to its barrel of his gun. West Point just 8 years ago. Someday he'll be chief of staff of the Army. So Patton was, regardless if he had the manpower, he was still pushing through.
Yeah.
And everyone else was, all the other commanders were telling him to back up.
Yeah.
And so they say that the Battle of Bulge really took a toll on him. He looked 40 years older. His face was bright red from always being an open-air Jeep. He had all types of depression. He had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
But he still pushed through.
Yeah. He's a good soldier.
How did Patton look when you seen him?
Huh?
How did Patton look when you seen him?
How Patton what?
How did Patton look when you seen him, face to face?
Oh, he looked weird and worn out.
He was beat.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
He was really beat.
Eisenhower didn't look like